Good morning, good afternoon to all the participants. It is a pleasure to welcome you in this webinar session organized in the context of the third launch of the e-Waste Challenge Massive Open Online course, the MOOC. This session will focus on e-waste management, standardization, and conformity assessment, and will be introduced and hosted by the World Resources Forum. My name is Francesca Cenin. I will facilitate this session on behalf of the WRF Secretariat, as well as providing a brief introduction to the 2025 version of the MOOC. In today's session, which is scheduled to last for 1 hour, after this initial introduction of the MOOC, Manuele Capelli, on behalf of the World Resources Forum, will introduce the presentation for about 30 minutes. And after his presentation, we will have a session of questions and answers for about 25 minutes. The presentation and the recording will be posted on the webpage of the webinar session and on the webinar pages of the WRF Secretariat. It is my pleasure now to share my presentation and present the learning path with all the courses that you can find on the e-Waste Challenge MOOC, and also to show the context in which this course is included. I will now, just a second, time to share. Can you see the presentation in full screen? Yes. Now you should be able to see it. So the e-Waste Challenge MOOC was developed in partnership between the WRF Secretariat, the EIT Raw Materials Academy, the University of Leuven in Belgium, the International Telecommunication Union, of course, the World Resources Forum, presenting today during the webinar, and it was also developed in cooperation with the WHO. The new version of the MOOC is hosted on the FutureLearn platform, and it is available from both FutureLearn and the web pages of the WRF Secretariat. And through the platform, the participants will be able to receive 5 certificates, 1 for each course, and an overall certificate by requesting it. The MOOC includes 5 courses which present a learning path from an introduction of the issues, the solutions, and the impacts, which was prepared for a general audience, and it's a very general introduction to the issues of e-waste, to a course which focuses on children health and also on the newest research on impacts on health and on children of the constituents and the hazardous substances included in e-waste, and is of the audience is general, but is specifically targeted to healthcare providers and those who are working on the health sector. The course 3, Reducing e-waste by Design, Standards, Business, and Policy, is looking at policies like EPRs and standards developed by the ITU to enact policy solutions at the national or local level. And it also looks at design as a main road to reduce the e-waste, preventing it. And it is directed to policymakers, business entrepreneurs, and students. Course 4, on inclusive and sustainable e-waste recycling, is looking into the guidance on how to recycle, best practices, worst practices, and also it provides the pathway for building traceability in the secondary value chain for the extraction of metals and critical materials from e-waste. This course is directed to recyclers, waste managers, and entrepreneurs. And the last course, which will be introduced today by Manuele, is new. And because we have spoken about traceability and standards in the previous courses, this course is maybe the new cherries because it provides information for auditors, e-waste recyclers, entrepreneurs, students on how to carry out conformity assessments and processes to ensure that the facilities are in conformity with international and national standards. And there will be also a presentation of brief presentation of these standards. So it is a pleasure now to welcome Manuele, who will present today and will introduce this new course, and which we hope will attract your attention and where you will find new and interesting information for your work or your studies. Thank you. Manuele, you have the floor.
Thank you, Francesca. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Very good. So welcome from my side. I will now give a short teaser on this module 5 of the e-waste management MOOC, standardization and conformity assessment. So these are the agenda of my presentation. So first I'm going to talk about the context and why it's important. Then the more specific challenges of e-waste or we management. I use this word interchangeably. And then I'm going to talk about standards and then more on the conformity assessment and also go into an example of what is being done in conformity assessment. So e-waste is one of the fastest growing waste types, and it's a specific waste because it's full of valuable materials, but it's also full of toxic materials, and they're characterized by a complex structure and composition. And if they're not managed well, they can generate a lot of issues, such as environmental and human health risks. And here you see on this figure also what the global e-waste monitor, which estimates global volumes of e-waste, forecasts also in the future in terms of volumes that are being generated. So we have this chapter 5 now that I'm going to go into. So e-waste, as I said, has valuable materials, but it also has toxic materials. So that's why it needs this special attention. It is generally a waste that needs proper disposal, and because of the valuable materials, it can be also a business opportunity. Therefore, a functioning conformity assessment to manage e-waste well reduces the environmental harm and also the loss of valuable materials that are in the e-waste. We have a lot of challenges in management. There is regulatory fragmentation, so there is no globally the same way that e-waste is being managed, and it also can vary a lot between country to country. There is often informal recycling facilities being placed, and also activities that people look for the more valuable parts in e-waste, but they don't. The toxic materials are not being removed safely this way. You have monitoring challenges, so it's difficult to know where all this e-waste is being produced and also where it ends up. And also sometimes there are technological challenges to treat it well, to remove and recover also the valuable materials. And this is why standards are important. Standards ensure safe and sustainable management of e-waste from collection to treatment and logistics. They ensure a level playing field between different actors, so different recycling facilities. If they all apply to the same standard, they have the same rules they have to apply to. And the standards give also guidance and define best practices for treatment of e-waste categories. In general, the standards improve compliance with legislation. So management standards are technical environmental guidelines that define how electronic waste should be collected, depolluted, dismantled, recycled, and monitored. And there's different standards out there. You see here some logos. In Switzerland, we have the CENELEC standard for e-waste. The European Union uses the CENELEC standard, but there is also others such as the R2 or the e-Stewards standard. And then there are also emerging standards, such as the ISO 59014 standard, which has a little bit of a different focus. You see here on the figure how it compares, for example, with the e-Stewards standard. So while they all have the general goal of improving e-waste management, they are different in sort of specific sectors. So here you see a little bit of comparison. There is also something I want to mention, a report out that looks into this comparison between different standards that is also available online. That came also out this year, so it's very recent. And then there's also 2 case studies that look into the application of this new ISO standard that is emerging, where the standard is being applied into different case studies to check if it's working well, if it covers all the different aspects. So to make sure that a standard is being followed, you need conformity assessment. So what does conformity assessment mean? So at the beginning, a facility that wants to treat e-waste needs to be certified to comply with a specific standard, which means that all the different requirements are checked, how their processes work, this is being validated, if they have all the permits, and that this is stays this way over time. There needs to be an independent control. So to ensure conformity, that's why it's called conformity assessment. And this is done through audits. So audits include site visits by independent auditors. It includes batch tests of materials to check if toxic materials have been removed properly. So it needs, or also if there is residuals of valuable materials that need to be recovered. All the documents are being checked, and it's also the downstream treatment of if there is a recycler that, for example, only collects certain materials, does some pre-treatment, but then it's sent somewhere else. The recycler needs to show where does it go, so it doesn't end up somewhere where it shouldn't be. And this is in most standards required, for example, in the CENELEC and e-Stewards standard. So I'm going to go into this example of checking the downstream treatment. So as an auditor, what do you have to do? You ask for the different registration of the inputs of the last 12 months usually. So you check if the volumes that claimed were treated are reflecting with what came in and what came out. And if also this information has been updated properly. But you also go and check at the facility, can you see the different materials being treated or what is maybe hidden somewhere. And then you look at which fractions these recyclers are registered to be able to treat, because maybe not the recycler cannot treat all different material fractions. And then check again, does it match with incoming devices and materials? And then the important part is also where are the fractions sent to? And it's especially important if they're sent to a different country, because then there needs to be the proper documentation and also permits that this is allowed, because you cannot just ship waste anywhere you want to. And there is also the problem that sometimes they claim that certain materials are being recovered, whether actually they are not recovered or recovered using processes that are illegal, for example. So these are things that need to be checked and also verified. Usually you cannot check everything, so you select different important fractions that you want to check, and then you also do like specific cases. So in general, this was a short intro on the more of the details that this course entails. The key learning outcomes of this course 5 is understand how the structure and purpose of these international standards work. Again, also really the importance of standardization in general, especially for e-waste. What are the different tools and techniques, as I explained before, for as an auditor, what needs to be checked specifically for e-waste? What are the techniques that apply? And also on the topic is professional ethics, upholding integrity, objectivity, and confidentiality. Because as an auditor, you have to think that you're looking into a business very deeply, and there are competitors that there is information that needs to be treated confidential. Understanding the environmental impact that e-waste can have if it's treated well or not treated well, because there are big differences. And then also the application of this knowledge by evaluating and designing e-waste management strategies. So this was my short teaser. I hope I caught your attention, and I wish you good luck with the MOOC course. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuele, for your presentation. It was very sharp and comprehensive about the course. And now we will open a session of questions and answers, and also a session which aims to be informal, where you can really pose questions to Manuele, who's an expert in this field. So take advantage of the presence of Manuele, and don't hesitate to ask questions to him. And to start this session, I want to mention that you have to open your mic and close it when you finish the question. You have different possibilities you can raise your hand in the menu React, or you can send your question through the chat or through the Q&A, and we will read it loud for everyone. So I open now the session of questions and answers, and while the participants prepare for the questions, I want to ask you, Manuele, what is the main objective of the standards? Basically, what are the differences between recycling facility that is certified and a recycling facility that is not certified, and how are these standards that you have mentioned different between them?
I mean, it's often to require a certification and applying to a standard is, for a company, it's additional effort and additional work, but it ensures that their processes are done properly. And in Switzerland, for example, they have to apply to a standard. They have to be certified, especially within this ecosystem of an EPR system where you have recycling fees. So only companies that have this certification and are being regularly audited are allowed to participate in this system of receiving money through recycling fees. That is, and if they don't comply anymore, they're automatically out. So it is something they have to do, but in when there are other systems around, such as EPR systems, that ensures also that they're being paid for their additional efforts, it allows for a functioning system.
Thank you. And I just want to, while the participants are also gearing up, ask you, what is necessary to ensure that there are accredited facilities and also auditors and in a country? What type of legislation is to be enacted?
Usually, I mean, there's a general waste legislation, but it is, we showed that e-waste is a special case because it does have these valuable materials, but also harmful materials, and it has very specific devices that are very different that also shouldn't be mixed. So there usually needs to be a specific e-waste legislation, e-waste policy also that gives guidance for these recyclers that e-waste is managed properly and also in a way that ensures that, yeah, the environmental harm is being minimized, really.
Okay, thank you so much. And I now hope that the participants have questions. You see that your mic is being activated, so you can just unmute and ask any questions. We see that there are no questions, maybe in the chat. No, also in the chat. And I would like to come back then with a curiosity about the standards. For example, in many facilities, the CENELEC standard is utilized, but also the R2 standard. Maybe one is European, the other one is more from the US, but what are the main differences? Do they provide standards for the facilities or for the shipments to the third party? So just want to ask about the difference. If a facility is to be certified CENELEC, how long would it take, or would it be the same as receiving an R2 certification?
So this I'm not an expert on. I'm not with the standardization agency. I would assume that they learn from each other a lot because like you said, the R2 is more being used in the US and the CENELEC is being used in Europe. And it's also, they can be adapted over time, especially for e-waste. It's important because there's always new devices that are coming out that need special attention and also need in an inclusion and might not be covered. And the other way is also true. So there's maybe devices that were very relevant in the past, but the technology changed. So they can be still in the standard, but they don't need to have like a special certification that needs to be included. So I think they're very similar, the R2 and CENELEC standard. And I think, yeah, they also influenced each other a little bit.
Great. Thank you. And now I have another, we have a question from a participant, Umoni Garba Ide.
Thank you. Hello.
Good morning.
Good.
Sorry for my English. I have two questions. The first is how can low income countries, especially in Africa, strengthen their conformity assessment system for waste management, given the gaps in laboratory, So are there scalable model for partnership recommended by the WRF?
I can, yes, it's a very relevant question. That is true that the lab analysis of the material is something that is part of the conformity assessment, and like you said, it might be not possible in all places. I wouldn't say that because cannot be done, that you cannot do all of the other things, which already are very important. So then you would rely more on the visual checking of how much, for example, toxic materials has been removed, and comparing it with the input material, and by knowing how much there should be in there, for example, batteries, then you can assess a little bit that how well the decontamination has taken place. But of course, the ideal place would be to have the laboratory analysis. And but what are if there is different technologies maybe that are less accurate but still provide some information, but they are cheaper or more easily obtained. So when you go in the detail, I think there are different solutions.
Thank you. I hope this answered the question, but you can come back and have a follow-up question if you would like to. We now share the question of Ivo Baudour. Do you foresee changes in the auditing work as regulations on waste stream to be changing due to the new frameworks, for example, the new tasks given to the European Chemical Agency?
I think generally it will not change too much. There are certain areas that are requiring more attention, and like I said, with new devices being introduced that maybe require now special attentions, whereas all devices that were very relevant in the past, like for example CRT screens, right, were a big issue, but they're really phasing out. You don't find that many of them anymore. They're not being produced anymore since a while, and the last ones are being now treated. So there will not be an issue in the future, but there are certain aspects. I think that standards were looking mostly at toxicity and material recovery and environmental impact. And I think in the future, they will look more also into social aspects of e-waste management. So this is maybe an area that will get more attention in the future.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions, but of course I'm not also an expert, but I have many curiosities about this subject because it's a very, very important also in the context of the work of the UN on critical metals and materials. The traceability of these metals is an issue really now on the table of the decision makers in many countries, and of course the auditing of the systems that allow this traceability are also very, very relevant and important. And I wanted to ask you, as you have mentioned, that social aspects are now introduced in the criteria for standards and therefore need to be audited. what is the difficulty and what are the peculiarities of audits that do not just look at the performance of a recycling facility, but also, for example, at aspects like the respect of human rights or the assessment of child labor in the value chain? How is it possible to assess the conformity to these criteria? And also how to do it, not only in a country where the extraction from e-waste is happening, and then in another one when maybe the recycling is taking place, and another one where the material is then reused. Or what are the challenges of these new standards when you carry out an audit?
Yes, I mean, social aspects are less easily quantifiable, right? So compared to other things, and they also don't have as much documentation maybe as like the laboratory analysis for toxic materials. But this is why these independent audits and also often spontaneous audits, so not so you don't say that you will go there, but you suddenly go check without notifying, and then you check the conditions, right? If you have a facility that is a formal facility that is certified, that complies also with workplace legislation, even though it's not the focus on like the e-waste auditor, but it's still, if it includes these social aspects, then you do the site visit, and then you see if there is child labor, for example, or there is other, and it's part of the site visit also to talk with the workers and understand how are their working conditions, and if there is something that it's not what it should be, and doesn't apply to the legislation. Also, what a company should provide in terms of workplace safety. Safety is a big issue, of course. Do they have protective equipment? But also other working conditions, such as exposure to heat or to the sun. If it, like, is it in a sheltered warehouse? Is there ventilation? Because if you have dust that is created during your processes, that's an issue. So the workers need to be protected of that as well.
Thank you. And now I see if there are other questions from the participants. And if there are no other questions, I would like to remind that the presentation and the recording will be posted on the webpage of the webinar session. But I wanted also to add that it will be shared by email to all the participants who registered for the webinar today. Then I want to thank you all for your participation today, and announce that the same webinar will be repeated in Spanish this afternoon at 3 p.m. CT, Central European Time. And I wanted to particularly thank Manuele Capelli, but also Artem, who's been helping for all the webinars and assisted us today. We will now close the meeting, and we thank you again for your interest and your participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.